Beast Wars Episode 12, Victory. This is a really fun episode because, similar to the last one, it had a minor focus on Dinobot where he was kind of thinking about being left alone and being the last, person, or Transformer, I guess, in sort of this weird in-between space of being a Maximal and a Predacon, because the whole point of this episode is that the Predacons finally destroy themselves, and it starts off, and it skips a little bit of time because it starts off basically at the Maximal base, and they skip over like this mission that Rat Trap had where he put a camera inside the Predacon base. So they kind of skip a bit of time, and it's like, alright, thanks to Rat Trap successfully completing his mission, we now have an inside peek at the Predacon base, and they see them finally have a big showdown because eventually everyone has decided it's time to get rid of Megatron because he keeps screwing stuff up. Like there's something he was like using up their energon to try to do something, and it screwed up. And they're like, we're tired of following you. So they have like this big shootout, and he hides behind this big tube of energon, which is insanely explosive. Like that's been the whole thing. Like energon, if they shoot it, it's super dangerous and it can kill everyone. So he hides behind it and he's yelling at them like, you idiots are gonna like kill us all, like you're gonna hit the energon and blow us all up. And that's exactly what happened. So they hit it, blows up, the signal is lost, and the Maximals all go to the Predacon base, and it's like, holy crap, we actually, it's actually over. Like they destroyed themselves because they just couldn't help it. So they go through the episode, they go through the Predacon base, and Dinobot isn't exactly happy because, kind of like the last episode, he's in this weird in-between state where he's with the Maximals, but these are still the people that he was with initially. Like, we don't really see any of that time because the first episode he decides to, end up joining the Maximals, but you know that he spent time with them. Like, he was a part of, Megatron's team for quite a while. So it was pretty cool the way they kind of played around with him being somewhat happy, but also being very upset because these are people that he considered honorable, and in some cases, like even if he considered them stupid or something, Cheetor kind of plays a little trick on him where he has like Tarantulas's legs, and he like puts him like he's hitting him like on the wall to make it sound like he's walking up behind Dinobot. And so Dinobot turns around and Cheetor starts laughing like, I got you, I was just playing with you. And Dinobot wasn't super happy about that. Like, they were the enemy, but, still show some respect to the dead. So I like how they kind of played around with that idea. And their whole point of going through the Predacon base was that they could use components from their ship to actually get the Maximals back home. So they find this thing that helps them basically make a hyperdrive, and I guess a temporal hyperdrive. Or actually, no, it was just a normal hyperdrive. They didn't even have the ability to travel through time, but they were just going to basically go to old Cybertron. It was pretty much their plan. So they set up the ship, and Dinobot tells them, like, I don't want to go. I'll just stay here and kind of rule. That was kind of his thing, is like, I'll just rule by myself and, just be alone. Like, you guys go home, and I'll just stay here, because he was in this weird in-between state where he didn't feel comfortable enough to just completely go with the Maximals back to Cybertron. And it was kind of similar to the Probe thing where it was like, oh, well, if I go to Cybertron, I'll still be one of the bad guys, even if it's, in the past. But it was really cool. I like that idea, how they played around with it. It was very somber for his character and stuff. And then as the episode continues, they finish the ship, and he's like, you guys go ahead, and I'm just going to stay here. And so he walks, and he comes across this cavern where all the Predacons are, because it turns out that they knew about the ship, or they knew about the camera on their ship, and it was because somebody tripped over a wire or something like that. Like somebody tripped over a wire, and that's how they found out. So they staged this whole thing so that the Maximals would go to their base, take the components, rebuild their ship, and then the Predacons could just steal the ship themselves, and they'd be able to go back to Cybertron. And so Dinobot figures this out, and he takes off, but he steps on like some rocks or whatever, like how they always do the thing where something drops or something. So he stepped on some rocks and it fell down, and they looked up and it's like, it's that traitor Dinobot. So they all like fly out of the thing and they start chasing him, and he tries to run back to the Maximal ship. And so he's running, and all of them are behind him. He gets shot, and so he gets taken out, and Optimus decides that he's not going to let him, get trapped behind. So of course he jumps off the ship, and Cheetor's like, well, I can't let Optimus do it himself. So he jumps off the ship, and they get like these giant shields. And Rhinox is like, all right, well, because Tigertron actually does join them, and he's going to leave as well. And Tigertron was going to go out there as well, and Rhinox is like, you sit there, and he's like, that's an order, so you stay here, because I still need people on the ship to actually fly this thing. So Rhinox, Rat Trap, and Tigertron are still on the ship. Optimus and Cheetor go out to save Dinobot, and they have like this crazy battle where they're dealing with all of the Predacons. The Predacons are trying to fight them, as well as kind of hit the ship a little bit to at least slow it down. And Optimus actually gets taken out. He gets knocked down, and then Cheetor gets knocked out, but he's able to make it to sort of the landing pad that they use to get on and off the ship. And he realizes, because he gets knocked out, but he realizes that his hand isn't touching the ground as the ship starts to fly, and it kind of wakes him up a little. So he yells to Optimus, like, we gotta get out of here. And he grabs Dinobot, and he throws him onto the ship. And he tries to make it, and he actually does make it, and Cheetor actually is able to grab his hand as the ship is flying. But Megatron shoots a laser, and it forces them to separate. For some reason, it didn't like blow either of their hands off, because that's something they do all the time, where they like blow parts off each other. But it just made them let go, and so they have like this slow motion thing where Cheetor is like looking down at Optimus, and Optimus is just falling to the ground because he let go. So the ship is flying through the air. Optimus ends up on the ground, and it's like, we had to leave Optimus behind, and Dinobot should really remember that, like Rat Trap was saying it to him. And then Megatron ends up on the ship. He actually makes it onto the ship, and so they have this crazy fight scene where he's shooting everybody, and they're fighting and stuff, and he and Rhinox end up going at it, and he, like, his tail actually flies off, it comes off of him as he's fighting, and Rhinox knocks him out. But then Rhinox sees that the tail kind of like stabbed into the command console for the ship, so it screwed everything up. Like it unregulated the thing, which was already unstable, so it like blew something, and so the ship started falling, straight back down to the ground again. And they're like, what the heck are we gonna do? We're just in a falling ship. And then here comes Optimus to save the day, and they have the silliest, cheesiest little scene. It was so funny. This was on purpose, and it was like, what's that? It's like, it's a bird. Like, no, it might be a plane, which makes no sense. It's like, no, it's Optimus. And they start playing, it's not the Superman theme song, but it's super, super close to the Superman theme song. Like, that was clearly the point, was to make fun of, like, Superman and kind of reference that. So it was such a silly, it was funny, but it was such a cheesy little scene. I loved it. It was like, they have the music playing, and it's so close. It's like, obviously they couldn't use that, otherwise they'd have to pay for it. But it was like, this is clearly meant to be him, and it was kind of him saving the plane, which is what he does. I believe that's like the first thing he does in the first movie and stuff. That's like one of the big things, is like him saving the plane. And it was such a funny moment. He just uses his thrusters, like, maximum power and stuff, and he slows the ship down as it's falling, and it basically goes straight up, and then it goes straight back to exactly where it was, which is kind of funny. But I love that little scene. It's so cheesy, but they just do that, and they have like a little Superman reference and stuff, and they have the music playing, and he saves the ship. They kick Megatron off, of course, and they beat the Predacons, as they normally do, and the Predacons take off. But it was a fun episode where, it has this first part that's really somber. It's like, wow, they defeated, the Predacons beat themselves, and then we get the rest of it where it was all a cool setup, which was a really smart plan, to do it where, let the Maximals think that the Predacons are gone, they take the ship and use the components to rebuild their own, and then the Predacons try to take it over. So it was actually a fairly cool plan. But I really liked this episode. I liked how they did the somber tone, and like I said, it touched on a little bit what they did with the last episode for Dinobot as well. It was just a bit more somber because he's kind of going through this empty ship, which is also cool too, because we get to see a lot more of the base and just random hallways and stuff like that. So that was also kind of cool, because everything is, there's really only a couple of sets, and mostly what we get to see that's new is really the planet itself, but for the most part it's just open, wastelands and stuff. Sometimes they have cool little things, because it'll be like, oh, like with the floating cliff thing, you know, sometimes the Energon does stuff, so that'll make areas look, you know, very different visually. But for the most part, it's like, oh, well, they're running and it's an open field or something like that, or, you know, open desert or whatever. So it was actually, you know, very minor, but still pretty cool to see more of the Predacon base on the inside and stuff like that. But certainly a fun episode. Of course, if you guys have any comments, please put them down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.